Hey guys, Ryan here from Buzz Overland. So in this video, we're going to walk through the installation of our Buzz cargo racks. This product can be installed as a standalone product, or it can be integrated into our modular cargo systems. In this video, we'll be showing it as a standalone. So in the box, you're going to receive 2 of the base plates. These are symmetrical, so there's no left and right. They can be installed any which way around. You're then going to receive 4 L brackets, 2 of which are long and 2 are short. We'll show you in a second how those go together. You'll have the 2 side brackets, a central stiffening brace. You'll have 4 of these stiffening braces. And then you'll have 6 pieces that make up the front and rear borders. 3 are for the rear and 3 are for the front. So we'll show you how it goes together now. All right guys, first step of this install is to take 1 short and 1 long of the L brackets. You're going to bolt these to the side brackets. What's really important is that when you bolt these on, they've got to be opposites. So whatever side on this one you have the short side, on the other side you need to have the long side. This is so when we install them into the boot, they marry up correctly. For this install, you'll see you've got a load of holes here, which means you can actually adjust the height of this cargo rack in 1-inch increments, depending on what set of holes you choose to use. I'm going to be installing this in the 1 inch higher than what standard would be. The reason for this is we're doing a full cargo system in this vehicle, and we're putting a new table that goes under the cargo racks onto this install. So if you want to have maximum amount of height above the cargo rack, just go in that position and you'll do 1 nut top and bottom. You're going to be using the dome heads in the supplied bag. These are going to be the M6 by 16s. So we'll go ahead and show you that now. Right guys, so we're busy putting the second bracket together. So you've got to remember, in order for this to go in the car, these are going to be opposite each other, and for the long side to meet up with the short side on that, you're actually going to assemble this exactly the same way as you assembled the first one, and that way when you put them in the car, they'll meet up correctly. Cool. All right, we'll go over to the vehicle now and get these installed. All right guys, so the next step is to install the brackets we've just made up into the vehicle. One tip we've got to avoid bolts falling through under the floor base, if you've installed this, is to use a bit of painter's tape to put over the holes for the L track fittings, because it is a bit of a pain if a bolt drops in there, because you've got to remove that to get underneath it. So we'll go ahead and put a bit of masking tape over all the holes, and then we'll get the cargo rack installed. All right, so we've got the painter's tape over the holes, so that should stop any nuisance bolts falling through. We're going to go ahead and get these side brackets on now. what we do, we'll actually reuse the bolts that you've taken out of there because you'll have removed your factory lashing points. So we'll actually reuse those bolts to mount this point too. They are an M8, standard M8 thread, should you need to source any separate ones. An extra set of hands here usually helps. And again, we're not going to tighten these down fully, we are going to leave them loose. Okay, so you'll see now what we mean by having a short and a long in opposite directions. The reason we do this is so when these get bolted together, the bending moment through the rack isn't in the center, or it's not just on one side. So the more you load the rack up, the more the forces oppose it and the stiffer it stays. So we'll get the rest of this in shortly. Right, so the next step is to install these sifting braces. We'll be installing these into the L brackets. You'll see you've got those two holes, so they'll line up with the center. You'll need to push this up to get everything to line up. And like I say, you've got to leave everything loose until we've got all the nuts and bolts in, and then we'll go around and tighten everything up in one go. So when you're doing the sifting brace on the back side of this bracket, the two holes in the center, you'll leave those out because we've got a central brace that crosses this span, and you've got to use slightly longer M6s to get that in. Alright, so we're going to carry on to the back one. Sometimes easier just to climb into the vehicle to do this. Alright guys, so now that we've got these in, we've got all our nuts and bolts in where we need to, we're now going to put the center brace in. You'll be using the longer button head supply, they're an M8 by 20. Right guys, so we've got the frame installed now. So we've got our side brackets, our central brace, and our stifting braces. This is all still loose, and we've left it loose on purpose. The next stage is to put the base plates in. When we get the base plates bolted down, that's going to pull everything straight. We're then going to go ahead and tighten all the nuts and bolts underneath, and then the last ones we're going to tighten are the two side ones. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the base plates now. Like I said earlier, the base plates are symmetrical, so there's no left and right. They can go in either which way. We'll get these on. What we do recommend you do before you slide it across and drop it in is get the small border piece on the side. The reason is you won't be able to access this bolt hole once it's slid in there. So we'll do that now, and then we'll get this base plate installed. All right guys, so to install these, you're going to be using the M8 by 12mm button heads that are supplied in the nut and bolt kit. Alright, so these you can go ahead and tighten those up because like I said, once this slides across, you're not going to have access to this end one. Okay, and the next step you'll be using the M16 countersunks. So you'll be dropping them through all the countersunk holes on this, and we'll be putting the bolts on, or the nuts on the underside. Again, not tightening anything up just yet. Cool, so those are all in loose now. We're going to do the same on the other side. What you'll notice is because I've raised the rack by 1 inch for this particular install, I'm not utilizing these two outer countersunks. So if you are doing it in the lowest position, you will use those. If you raise the rack, then you won't use those. Alright guys, so now we've got both sides done. We're going to put in the center pieces, the center border pieces on the front. We'll do the border pieces on the rear. This is going to start to pull this up to align it. And then once those are in, we're going to go ahead and tighten up all the bolts that we've put through the top plates, which are the countersunk bolts. And then we'll go ahead and tighten up all the bolts on the frame underneath. Alright guys, so we've got our rear border piece on now. Everything is still loose on the two center sections. I'm now going to go ahead and tighten up the nuts and bolts on the base plates, and then we're going to tighten up the border pieces. Alright guys, so we've got the nuts and bolts all tightened up on the top. We've now got to tighten up the nuts and bolts on the frame. This is the last job to do, and then our install will be complete. Right guys, so final step is to tighten up the bolts on the side brackets where they mount onto the factory mounting locations. So we'll go ahead and tighten those up now, and that'll complete the install of our rack. Right guys, so that's the installation of the both racks as a standalone and done now. So you can see the rack's nice and solid. You can load that up with all your gear and off you go.